July 12th, near some garbage containers, police officers were closely examining something. Passers-by stopped to try to understand what was going on. Some already guessed the reason for the police's interest in the dumpsters. News about a suitcase containing the mutilated body of a child had quickly spread through Perm. What exactly happened on that summer day? Who could have been so cruel as to treat a child this way and discard them like trash? Let's find out. For a homeless man in Perm, July 11th seemed like any other day, but that night, his life would forever be divided into before and after. In the early hours of July 12th, 2024, around 4 a.m., a homeless man decided to check the dumpsters near a building on Monastyrskaya Street in the Leninsky district of Perm. In one of these bins, he came across a suitcase. Hoping to find something valuable, he opened it and was horrified. Inside was the bloody body of a child, marked by multiple stab wounds. In a panic, the man ran to nearby passers-by, pleading with them to call the police. When officers arrived, they cordoned off the scene and began examining the grisly discovery. Inside the suitcase lay the body of a boy, estimated to be around 6 to 8 years old, showing clear signs of violent death and strangulation. His face was bruised and covered in cuts, and his body was soaked in blood. Police carefully gathered every possible piece of evidence, interviewed witnesses, reviewed surveillance footage, and worked with canine units. After examining the boy's injuries, forensic experts concluded that the stab wounds and strangulation had likely been inflicted by a woman's hands. Footage from a nearby surveillance camera captured a thin woman walking past the building entrance, carrying a large black suitcase, one that looked remarkably similar to the one containing the boy's body. Unfortunately, the woman's face wasn't visible in the footage. The police went door to door, showing the woman's photo to residents in nearby buildings. During their questioning, they spoke to the building's caretaker, who mentioned a family living there that might match the description. According to her, the family was well regarded, with 4 children. The boy in question looked to be about 5, though he was actually a bit older and had just completed 1st grade. The caretaker hadn't seen the family for the past 2 days and assumed they had gone to their summer house. She described the mother as a very caring stay-at-home parent who did everything for her children, and the father as hardworking. He was employed in construction. Since no one was home and the family couldn't be reached, suspicions initially centered on them. Soon, however, the mother noticed numerous missed calls on her phone and returned one of them. She assured investigators that the entire family was safe and well. They were indeed at their summer home together, with all 4 children. At this point, investigators informed the media that the identities of both the boy and the suspect remained unknown. It was possible that the deceased boy had no connection to this building. Detectives continued analyzing the footage from the surveillance camera. By tracking the woman's movements, they managed to piece together her route and even found footage from additional cameras in downtown Perm. The video showed her walking across a bridge along the Kama River, about 700 meters from where the child was discovered. In the next clip, taken on Komsomol Avenue, the suspect had turned around and entered Perm's main street, walking briskly with the suitcase in tow. Cars zoomed by, but nobody seemed to pay attention to the woman with the suitcase in the middle of the night. At one point, her path became erratic, suggesting she might have been searching for a place to dispose of the suitcase. Eventually, she circled back to Monastyrskaya Street, leaving the suitcase by a dumpster. In the next recording, taken at dawn, the woman was seen returning to the riverside walkway. This time, her hands were empty. Another camera caught her walking along the pedestrian areas near the Kama River. For reasons yet unknown, this woman had spent most of the night wandering downtown Perm, trying to dispose of a child's body stuffed inside a suitcase. Investigators were now tasked with identifying this woman, understanding her connection to the boy, and determining her involvement in his death. On the afternoon of July 12th, relatives of the woman from the video contacted law enforcement, reporting that both the mother and child were missing. Investigators quickly identified the woman as Irina Shatova, born in 1990 and originally from Perm. Irina's parents identified the murdered boy as their 9-year-old grandson. Her father, a retired police lieutenant colonel, was in shock, struggling with heart issues that flared up amid the unfolding tragedy. Irina was nowhere to be found. She hadn't appeared on any other city cameras and seemed to have vanished, possibly having left Perm altogether. Police conducted a swift search of Irina's apartment, located across the city from where the suitcase was discovered. Inside, they found a blood-stained knife and a clothesline that was likely used by the mother to strangle her child. The most crucial discovery, however, was Irina's personal journal, which contained entries hinting at her possible whereabouts. We'll return to the details of this journal a bit later. Irina Shatova was apprehended on the evening of July 13th in Perm. She had been hiding in the attic of the Zhemchuzhina hotel. Outwardly, she appeared eerily calm, too calm, which sent chills down everyone's spine. During interrogation, she answered the investigators' questions with cold composure. Initially, Irina fully confessed to the crime, but then she changed her testimony, claiming she owed a large debt and that debt collectors had begun threatening her. She went on to say that these collectors were the ones responsible for her son's murder. Naturally, this explanation sounded utterly irrational, but a psychiatric evaluation deemed her sane. In the end, Shatova accepted all charges brought against her, though the true motive remains unclear to this day.
Шатова Ирина Валерьевна.
Производится ваше задержание. Сегодня 13 июля 2024 года. Так что вы подозреваетесь в убийстве малолетнего, а именно и в умышленном причинении смерти другому человеку, малолетнему Шатову Льву Сергеевичу, 15 года. Заявления по поводу задержания у вас какие-либо имеются?
Нет.
Кому-то сообщить о своем задержании желаете?
According to family members, when their son was born, Irina and her husband adored him deeply. They were very happy together, traveling around the world often. The boy was very affectionate with his mother, and she reciprocated. He always called her mommy. Irina never left her son alone. He didn't even attend school but was homeschooled using a Japanese system. A year before the incident, Irina divorced her husband. According to her husband's relatives, the divorce was her decision, supposedly because she had a lover. However, neighbors had never seen any men around her. No one visited except for food delivery couriers. After the divorce, she became increasingly withdrawn, rarely leaving her apartment. During one of her interrogations, Irina shared with investigators why she committed such a horrendous act. She said that after her husband left, she struggled emotionally and financially. She insisted that it was he who abandoned her, not the other way around. Neighbors' accounts corroborated this version. Her husband had always wanted to leave Russia for America, but Irina opposed the move. In 2023, he packed his things, left the family, and eventually left the country. Irina mentioned that the special military operation and mobilization may have been an additional push for his departure. At the time of the child's murder, he was in an American prison for illegally crossing the border after being denied a visa, so he was unaware of the incident. Irina retreated into herself, lost her motivation, and stopped going to work. Her debts piled up. She claimed to owe more than 3 million rubles. However, investigators discovered the total debt was much higher, over 50 million rubles. She worked from home in trading and initially did well. People began entrusting her with their money, and she attracted sponsors. But soon, her investments failed, leading to the loss of her funds and those of her clients. As the financial pressure mounted, Irina started receiving threats, demands to repay the debt, and even warnings of harm to her son. She broke down psychologically and decided to end her life, but didn't want her son to be left as an orphan. So, on the night of July 11th to 12th, 2024, she strangled her son with a clothesline. To make sure he was dead, she stabbed him multiple times. She retrieved a large black suitcase, placed her son's body inside, and left the apartment. Initially, she went to a bridge over the Kama River, intending to jump with the suitcase, but she couldn't lift it. She then headed to the hotel where she was eventually found. She climbed to the rooftop and stood at the edge, prepared to jump, but thoughts of her parents held her back. She feared that if she committed suicide, her parents would be left responsible for her debt. She climbed down from the roof and spent the night wandering through the city, carrying the suitcase with her son's body. She searched for a place to hide it, and eventually left it at a trash collection site near a residential building. She then returned to the hotel and hid in the attic. On the morning of July 12th, Irina took a taxi back to the place where she'd left the suitcase. As she approached, she saw that the police had cordoned off the area, so she ordered the driver to keep going. She returned to the attic and followed the news through her phone on social media.
За что задержаны, можете пояснить?
Статья 105, часть 2, убийство малолетнего.
Что совершили?
Убила собственного сына.
Вину в совершении преступления
Да,
признаете?
признаю.
Полностью?
Полностью.
То есть один, да? Оборот вокруг шеи?
И вот так вот завязала.
Завязали.
Дальше содрала футболку и сделала 3 дырки в районе сердца. Оставила чемодан, развернулась, вышла из дворов и пошла по Монастырской улице в сторону набережной.
Let's return to the diary found in Irina Shatova's apartment. This diary played a crucial role in locating her. On its pages, Irina detailed how she envisioned an end to her suffering, recounting moments from her life, personal reflections, and thoughts on death. The last 2 pages were torn out and were never found. Investigators speculate they may have contained her thoughts on what she planned to do to her son. The diary also mentioned the Jemchuzhina hotel, from which she'd considered jumping. After reading this, the officers immediately headed to the hotel, where they eventually found her. The diary helped us understand her motives, which initially seemed irrational, and allowed us to anticipate her next moves, said the investigator. We were able to locate her only after we understood. When asked if she had killed her son, Irina responded affirmatively, saying, "My son was, yet appeared not to fully comprehend the reality of her actions." Investigators believe this too was evident in her diary. The entries reveal a psychopathic attachment to her son, marked by Irina's failure to differentiate between herself and her child. She often wrote about us, doing things or deciding things together. Even the thought of being separated from him, even briefly, caused her deep anguish. She describes feeling tormented whenever she left home, even if he was safely with his grandparents. Irina slept in the same bed with her son, fearing to leave him alone even at night. Medical experts concluded that Irina had an unusual emotional attachment to her child. She did not perceive her act as murder in the conventional sense, but rather as a kind of self-destruction. In her mind, taking her son's life was akin to suicide. The relationship between mother and son bore signs of psychopathic attachment. She avoided sending him to daycare or school, and he rarely interacted with peers. She only entrusted him to her relatives for short periods and never left him alone. The diary's pages are filled with reflections on her bond with her son, along with the resentful feelings toward the boy's father, who left her with mounting debts and fled to the US. Her financial failures, which played a significant role in what eventually transpired, weighed heavily on her. Irina now faces up to 20 years in prison. Now I'll read a brief statement from the lead investigator in this case. "I see her actions as those of someone who felt utterly trapped. She saw no way out for herself. Do you agree with the investigator's assessment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.